Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Ariel Shivers McGrew of Tactful Disruption. Ariel, it's awesome having you on the show.
It's so nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
No problem. Super excited to have you on. And before we jumped in, I want to read a little bit more about Ariel so you can hear about all the awesome things that she's doing. And she's a published author, counselor, advocate, entrepreneur, and military veteran. Ariel possesses the with authenticity, vulnerability, and courage. Her unrelenting passion and commitment to empowering ability to show others to drive important social initiatives forward with agility and focus makes her a sought-after leader in many arenas. High-impact presenter and business development expert, Ariel is a returning media guest to conversation topics stemming from women and veterans, diversity and inclusion, personal development and entrepreneurship. And Ariel was recognized as a Woman Veteran of the Year in 2019. And her accolades include Miss Veteran America, Semi-Finalist in 2017, and Miss Black Utah in 2010. Ariel, you're doing many awesome things. Super excited to have you on the show. Are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
I am ready.
Awesome. Let's do it. So to kick everything off, I wanted to hear a little bit more on how you got started. Could you take us through what I call your CEO story? We'll let you get started with all the awesomeness that you're working on.
Yeah, it's real short. I'm going to keep a long story short. I got tired of being around people who were sleeping on me. So, no, the reality of it is, how Taraji P. Henson started her movement saying there were no Black therapists, right? Mm-hmm. Here it was. I was a Black therapist. I am a Black therapist, right? Licensed professional counselor. So I'm trained to see pathology as it sits in front of me. Mm-hmm. But what was even more interesting was I wanted to do career development, and they are very different to other people when it's like career and mental health are really intertwined. You can't have one without the other. I mean, there is literature that dates all the way back to like 1952 about this. So I was working in spaces and places for people who knew that I was a counselor, but wanted me to, be in different roles. So for me, it was like the coolest way to kind of develop this mentality of becoming like the Nike of mental health and career development. Let me show y'all how to do this. This is kind of fun. So they were leveraging the reality that I was affiliated with the military. They're like, hey, we need women veterans. We want to talk to women veterans of color. We want them to do things. And it just opened one door after another. And I think the aha moment for me was when I helped a veteran-owned company. They were speaking clear English to me, but not to the managing director that I was under. So I was like translating it. We ended up winning a $250,000 grant, and it was to really help with the federal and state technology partnership. And I was looking at it from the strategic plan that the company had organized, saying, hey, we want to implement more technology. And I'm like, well, what if instead of just implementing it in the organization within our physical space, we actually think about putting that in our programming? And so it was a great way to leverage that mental health background of listening 80%, talking 20%, but being 100% self-aware to say, okay, I figured out how I can actually help people with some of the challenges, because the person was brilliant. But the thing about brilliance is there's a fine line between genius and insanity. And so having that experience of counseling the criminally insane to mother and daughter teams, it's like I work with people all day long. So tactful disruption to me was really how I am as a person. And our tagline is boldly editing workplace italics, which is just people, culture, and organization. So it was like a no-brainer that, hey, I'm a mental health coach and consultant. But I'm telling people this, and they're still like, we want you for the job. Okay, great. But in my mind, these are projects. I'm not really an employee because I'm at a state of self-actualization. So I realized there's a way to help other people do that. And one of the routes I found was through career development. Now, some people will say it's entrepreneurship, it's economic development, but it's self-actualization. We all need to do things that make us happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the most powerful words. And I think that's something that when you are able to kind of self-actualize or get to that moment in that space, that's when really phenomenal things happen. Because I say so often that so many times we end up running other people's races, not running our own. And when you start to understand what that is and you understand what your race is and how exactly you can make that happen and how it manifests itself, that's when everything kind of flows from there.
I agree.
Awesome. So I know you touched on it a little bit about, tactful disruption, exactly what you do and how you support clients. Can you drill down a little bit more to let us know exactly how that process goes and who exactly you connect with?
Sure. So we do like one-to-one mental health coaching. Now, HIPAA is rolling out, not HIPAA. Let me not say that. there is a rollout of new telebehavioral health laws that are coming into play. But what I found was, if I went through organizations like the Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance, they're like 35 years old. They do peer support groups, right? So some of those sessions are free, but really it's a resource that deals with people who have a likely experience. So it's being able to tell that experience, putting truth to it, but with people who have been through it. Because sometimes people don't realize, counselors, like, there's a real journey to becoming a psychotherapist, like a real journey. It's like, no, we had to try on many personalities, and we've dealt with a lot of type of personalities to be like, oh, I get it, we get it, right? Because we're here to coach you. What I found was they wanted to move a women veterans of color group online, but they don't have any people of color in the organization who speaks to that audience. And so we developed a really dope relationship, and I said, hey, let me do the campaigns. So they pay us up front. We create the campaigns. We're speaking the language of the population. And then on the back end, I'm running those peer support groups every Sunday at 6 p.m. for them. But there's twofold. So I'm certified as a veteran peer support specialist. So it's like, hey, I'll share my story. I married a narcissist. I'm like an empath. It's crazy. I had, that gives you PTSD. The reality of it's just, I had a human experience. But I want to talk to people who understand what that human experience is like when you're wearing this uniform, when you don't have an opportunity to be as vulnerable as others, because it comes with a lot more. Specifically, like, my MOS is PSYOP. There are not a lot of females that are qualified to be PSYOP. Additionally, there's not a whole bunch of minority women who are in PSYOP. So it comes with its own implied social responsibilities. And I'm always up for a challenge. So we do the campaigns on the front end, we do the peer support groups. And then what happens is we end up getting people who go, hey, I love this, but I read about your company and I need help with this career piece. So it's like, hey, we're doing something for an organization. In the midst of doing it for the organization, we're using that appreciative inquiry framework. So we're looking at their team dynamics too, and we're kind of helping them have transparent conversations and highlighting, because remember, we're trained to see pathology as it sits in front of us. Like, hey, that person might be struggling. You might want to help your buddy out.
Right.
So there's a new camaraderie that gets created there. But then whoever the primary is, they'll end up calling. And I love it. Like, there'll be quotes. They're like, oh my God, I love talking to you. You're like my personal therapist. And I'm like, hey, I'll send you an invoice. So them paying for those campaigns up front gave us an opportunity to really give away free therapy and just peer support style, where you drop into a room that's HIPAA compliant and you talk to me as a counselor for 30 to 50 minutes. I will cut you off at 60. So you talk to me and you get some stuff out. Because if you speak it, what ends up happening is you really start to normalize your experience. You start to destigmatize yourself, and then the healing starts to happen, because when you give life to something, it's available now for you to really watch it grow.
Yeah, that's extremely powerful. And I think that so many times there's not always, I guess, space that's created and for that to happen, whether we're talking about organizations or us individual or a combination of both. And I love that you have created those, obviously, now, I guess, virtual opportunities, but definitely in ways in which people can let a lot of that stuff out. Because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, sometimes that is what happens with mental health, where it's sometimes not talked about, it's not addressed, it's not looked at. And a lot of times it can be bottled up and manifest itself in not so great ways, I guess you could say.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Awesome. So what I wanted to ask you for what I call your secret sauce, and this could be for yourself or your business or a combination of both, but what do you feel kind of sets you apart and makes you unique?
I'm talented and confident, but I understand that I'm a Black intellect. And I think sometimes I'm not dealing with people who understand what that is. So it's like, yeah, keep trying to put the box on me, but that's why I agree that I am tactfully disruptive. And just I'm not just giving you this framework for a company. I'm giving you this concept that's who I am as a person. It's about the right questions, but it's about being in those environments and really helping people understand that we could do this caring relationship as long as we're creating win-win strategies that allow for us to recognize self-actualization is not possible if pathology is present. So if we're not moving together as a team, something is sick within the body of what we're trying to do. So let's fix it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that definitely, correct me if I'm wrong, with, tactful disruption, you have to understand kind of like I guess the whole for the sum of its parts, and understand exactly how each of them interact. And I think when you're able to kind of see the forest for the trees, so to speak, then you're able to kind of understand, like you mentioned, like each of those different, I guess, interdependent parts and how exactly they coexist and co-create to see what we usually manifest itself in, business operations or products and services. But if we don't take care of the sum of those parts and we don't pay attention to those, then a lot of times we don't have the great products and services or the great relationships and so many things in ways that it manifests itself.
Absolutely. Like, this feels great. Like, yes. Because I remember when I first like introduced this concept, people looked at me like I was crazy. Like, what?
Yeah.
You think mental health is a diversity and inclusion shortcoming? I'm like, well, yeah. And now look, it's a public health crisis. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's just even the training of becoming a clinician, these theories, these are super old European centric theories from some very questionable white males.
Mm-hmm.
And rarely so often do we have conversations about mental health in the workplace, or the workplace creating mental health struggles, and the reality that like we're all experiencing real labor pains, not from the production of like actually giving birth, but like on a whole nother level of like trying to get to your second self. Like, this shelter in place, what I think was a phenomenal blessing in disguise for people to sit down and recognize that you've not been well and you need to
Mm-hmm.
be with yourself. Allow yourself to catch up to yourself, and then recognize that you got some reflecting to do, but if you reflect, you will heal. And
Mm-hmm.
to me, that's one of those things where it's like it's phenomenal to be like right here right now, and it's like, okay, all that hard work has not been for naught. All the 8 years of people saying I don't know how to get a Black counselor, and it's like there's one sitting in front of you. Like I'm a clinician,
Yeah.
that's a real skill set. I don't know why you don't understand it.
Yeah.
It's its own thing, because in many ways I feel like it's one of those professions like teaching. It doesn't always get the credit it's due, but when
Mm-hmm.
you show up and you're people like me and you go into organizations and you're like, yeah, I want to take this job, and then you start defying some of the little labor laws or practices, and they're like, what is that? It's like, I don't believe in having that type of labor pain. My back is not about to hurt because you're going to throw more on me than I'm willing to say, no, that's not my level of resignation today. I will not be defeated by your petty tactics. And sometimes you got to recognize, are they petty, or have they always kind of had this persistent little trait that might be a personality disorder?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it kind of sounds like, and definitely, again, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like a lot of times within organizations, especially, not really, I guess, treating the actual problem. Sometimes just treating the I guess the manifestation of the problems, and not getting to the root of what that issue is. And it kind of sounds like, that's what you kind of see within organizations to help treat them, to heal the entire organization as a whole.
Yes. Well, very beautifully said.
Nice. Just want to make sure I'm picking up what you're putting down. So I absolutely love and appreciate that. And so I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and I wanted to ask you for what I call a CEO hack. So this could be like an app, a book, or a habit that you have. What's something that makes you more effective and efficient?
I read 25 pages a day. I don't care what it is. I just read 25 pages a day, primarily because I'm working on my PhD in business psychology.
Nice.
And so, like, I switched programs halfway through. So, going from counselor education and supervision, that came so naturally to me. Like, I would devour those books, to reading something that is not as natural to me. It's like, what the hell are they talking about? So I got in the habit of saying, okay, I'm going to read 25 pages a day until this is like a second language to me. Like, it's so natural that like people would think I was a genius, and it's like, nope, I just learned to be disciplined.
Mm. No, that's a really powerful thing. And I think, that's like a hack within a hack, because I think so many times people see, expert, they see all the experience that you have. But I think so many times we zoom past and go to the finish line, rather than seeing the discipline action that you kind of spoke to, the consistency on a regular basis in terms of how you can be an expert. We don't see, we don't see the chopping at the tree, so to speak, and how the tree falls and it becomes, all the phenomenal things that you're able to be knowledgeable about. We just see kind of like the end of that, and we don't see the process.
Yeah, and I think that, thank you for saying that, because I think that's one of the things on the one-to-one coaching side. We really do help people understand that, these career choices have to be intentional. And if you don't know why you're picking certain jobs, we're more than happy to do a career genogram with you, right? If you want to know what that is, you can go to our Instagram and look at the little ads. Like, we try to, use scholarly wisdom, but practical truth. So we want it to pop. That's why we advocate for military, millennials, and minorities. So we keep it at a group that's already divergent in their thinking.
Right, absolutely, because it's a lot harder to probably kind of change people that don't have that divergent thinking and try to express something to them. But a lot of times you can change the masses by being able to kind of change those people that have those divergent thoughts, because they eventually become the leaders.
They are the leaders.
True.
Like we wake up, us millennials, man, we had it rough. We went and got degrees. They said, get a degree. We graduated out of recession. They said, we're not hiring job freaks. We said, we'll join the military. We joined the military. They said, well, do you have PTSD? We said, is that illegal? Can you ask me that? And then we found out, it's not that I have PTSD. It's that I raised my right hand to patiently wait for violent confrontation. It means I'm sitting on ready. So the violent confrontations that I'm having are internal reactions to, what the fuck is this culture? What are you guys exposing me to? Because I learned one team, one fight. Yes, I may not like you, but hey, one team, one fight. We have a mission. Additionally, I'm learning strategy. So the talent development piece is a part of the career choice versus, walking into this private world and it's like, what is this? Just a bunch of people said, I want to start a business. Some stuff started happening, money started coming in, and they said, fuck them people, we making money.
Right.
And it's like, no, you can't do that to people, because you need that. You're not a leader without a followership.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's definitely something that we all kind of have to keep in mind about all those different aspects of how we're growing and the mission and what exactly we're doing and how that manifests itself, as you said so well. So I wanted to ask you now for what I call a CEO nugget. So this could be like a word of wisdom or piece of advice. It might be something you would tell a client, or if you hopped into a time machine, you might tell your younger business self.
Recognize what the standard is, because it might be less than what you require of yourself. I wholeheartedly believe sometimes we make things harder for ourselves than they have to be, because we're operating from, I think, our own internalized version of like what quality is or isn't. But sometimes the standard is just not quality. If you can meet the standard, you can get rid of a whole bunch of extra additional anxiety that you have self-invoked.
Absolutely. And do you mean that so many times it might be starting a business or whatever we might try to do in our careers? So many times we have, I guess, the bar set so high on what can get us into the door or get us started with that we have that, I guess, frustration, fear, whatever that might be, and however it manifests itself. But if we are able to kind of understand that it's maybe not as high, at least to get started, then we allow ourselves that opportunity to kind of propel forward.
Yes, I do think that that's one of the things that's said in there. I think it's one of those things that the person has to wear as well, because we all have different standards by which we live. Like, I'm coming from that military experience, military lens sometimes. So I understand that the standard is the standard. We train to the standard, we don't train to time. But the standard may just be the bare minimum. The bare minimum is enough for everybody to get a 60%. Versus me recognizing that, like, no, my requirements are that I will walk away with X, Y, and Z fulfilled. So whatever those personal objectives are. And sometimes when we're stepping out of playing an extra in our own lives into like our lifetime story, we really have forgotten that like all that other stuff probably wasn't even what we required to grow. It was just us meeting the standard the whole time. So it's like hitting ceilings instead of reaching goals.
That's extremely powerful. And I think that it kind of sounds like it has to do so much with the, I guess, perspective and mindset as well. Because I think, again, like I talked about, looking externally for validation or even not necessarily acceptance, but just the measure of success, I guess you can say, and what exactly that looks out, rather than doing it and figuring out what that is internally and understand what are the true measures that you're trying to accomplish.
Yes, exactly. Like, it's so subjective. So it's really about, who are you? And if you don't know, that's the perfect time to get a mental health coach, because that's what they're there for, to hold space, right? But that's why we have racism as a public health crisis right now, right? Because it's more than just the color of your skin. It's about the genealogy. It's about understanding those backstories, and it's like, some things are more interesting with a backstory. But if you don't know what it is, then what are you actualizing towards?
Yeah, exactly. What are you moving towards? What are you actually accomplishing, and what impact are you truly having? And I definitely appreciate that. And so now I wanted to ask you my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And we're hoping to have different quote unquote CEOs on this show. So, Ariel, what does being a CEO mean to you?
It means being thoughtful, present, and playful.
Mm,
That it's, minding what matters, but making sure that I am not killing myself in the process. Killing myself the moment I feel anxiety, recognizing that, having a level of self-awareness to know, hey, every time that person says that, that makes me uncomfortable. Something is happening here. You know what? When I'm creating this, I don't like the way it feels. Hey, when I created that, oh my God, my heart lit up. I felt great. I told myself I was a genius. Put that one out. That one feels good, like just that to me. Be playful, be present, but be productive.
nice. I love those kind of three aspects, kind of like the legs of a stool, so to speak, because I almost feel like if you don't have one, then the whole entire stool kind of topples over. And I think so many times, again, as we kind of talked about, we're not only not, I guess, aware of those things, we don't really create that space and create that time in order to do that. And as you kind of touched on, during a time like this where everything has literally come to a pause, and kind of force that honest look at where you are and what you're accomplishing, and how your mental health is so important to happen, that we kind of take advantage of this time as well.
Definitely. I hope you've been taking advantage of this time. I know you've been working hard, sir.
I've been working hard, and I try to. You can't help but take advantage of the time, because it's so much of a transformational time that everything that you did on a regular basis is not the normal. So it kind of has been a very tactfully disruptive time, so to speak.
I love it. It has been though, right? Because now people have really had to get some sense about themselves. And for us to recognize wholeheartedly and realistically for the first time, common sense is not common because half of us have been living in isolation. So,
Mm.
now it's like people, you can almost feel it. It's so palpable. People saying like, those soul urges, like people need hugs, people need people now.
Absolutely. And we realized that we probably didn't have those human interactions, that people connection that we had. We thought we were having everybody to some degree was kind of just zooming through, I guess, life, you can say.
Yeah, I mean, I bet you if you put it out there and ask people after this interview, how many of you still interact with some of those people you saw every day? I bet you like more than half would be like, I have it. And to be honest, I have peace now.
Yeah.
I have peace. I'm glad they fell off, or, I'm not sure, but my life has been redirected since then. It's almost like, it's it's kind of like a power, right? Ghost died, but like,
Yeah.
it's a new season. This is a new type of game, right? Chess,
Hmm.
not checkers. So it's like,
Exactly.
whoa, like it's a whole new scene, whole new cut, whole new mission. Like it's like what's about to happen. And I love that. I love that like you're literally getting to experience a redo, right? Like
Hmm.
if you felt like you weren't getting it right, or you felt like you went through too much, it's our modern day biblical times. The world has stopped for you to understand what you need in your universe to make some stuff happen. So I
Yeah.
think that's pretty dope if you look at it that way. I don't know. I'm a glass half full chick.
So am I. I'm very much that type of person too. And I think, as you kind of touched on, it's so important to be able to kind of take advantage of that time as well. Because I think a lot of times, just like with everything else that's been happening, we can kind of just allow life to kind of happen and zoom through and wait till, be patiently wait or anxiously waiting to the end, when in reality, this is the present that we have right in front of us. So,
Like a
I,
literal present, isn't
exactly.
it?
Exactly. Well, I definitely appreciate that, Ariel, and I appreciate your time even more. What I wanted to do is pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional you can let our readers and listeners know, and of course, how best they get a hold of you and find out about all the awesome things you're working on.
Oh, thank you. We are a digital mental health coaching and consulting practice. We address the intersection. So you'll see that we use a lot of little wood figures because we recognize it's a personal journey. It doesn't actually come with a face. It's what you make it. But we want to be here for you in the process. If you know any women veterans who need additional support, we run free emotional peer support groups every Sunday at 6 p.m. Um, the link is, you can find the link on our Instagram page. If you ever want to know what we're up to, just follow us on social.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And to make it even easier, we'll have the links and information in the show notes as well, too, so that everybody can follow up with us. And I think obviously this is a very transformational time, as we kind of talked about. And I think so many times we zoom over mental health, we zoom over checking in to make sure that you're okay. So I appreciate you for kind of leading that charge and making us reminding us of how important that is as well, too. So Ariel, truly appreciate that. And I hope you have a great rest of the day.
You too. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. And I'll cut this off here. Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh again from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have a very special guest on the show today. We had a phenomenal interview with Ariel Shivers McGrew of Tactful Disruption. Ariel, it's great to have you back on this bonus section. And for people that may not have listened to this, to the interview itself, could you tell us a little bit more about what it is that you do and how you serve the clients you work with?
Sure. Thanks for having me back. So Tactful Disruption is a cross-cutting digital mental health coaching and consulting practice that addresses intersections. Our tagline is boldly editing workplace italics. Italics to us is people, culture, and organizations. And we have a unique approach to doing that through one-to-one facilitation, speaking, and through workshops, training around D&I, through exercises like Healing of the Ages. We use an appreciative inquiry and life design framework.
Nice. I definitely appreciate that. And we were just kind of talking about, one of the Instagram videos that you put out. And I love kind of I don't want to say creative and unique approach to a lot of the ways in which people don't see like mental health and how it manifests itself. But you talked about, and we showed kind of like, and we'll have that in the notes too, of one of the videos that you did as well. Could you talk a little bit more about that video, but also too, like how you're able to kind of see those things and be able to kind of, I guess, communicate with your clients and people you work with on how important that is?
So, it's a heavy question, right?
Yes.
So the way we do that is, so I am a licensed professional counselor. I have been a clinical mental health clinician since, when did I graduate? 2013. And the journey has been phenomenal, but the journey to becoming a psychotherapist means a lot more than I think people realize. So it's really understanding personality disorders, mood dysregulation issues, how anxiety could present itself. And that was one of the concepts I wanted to put out there, because it's easy to draw people's attention around the idea that like depression is more common than we think. So people say, yeah, I experienced depression. But people don't necessarily say, I experience anxiety. Or the reason I don't like to be around these people is social anxiety. Or the only time I really talk to people is when I take a cigarette break. So it's like, there's something to be said about the smokers in most organizations, right? They have very unique personalities. So it's like, what is that? So I heard a song by Cal Scrooby, and it was called Cigarette Break. And I was like, okay, I like this. And there was something that was said about how like you don't carry anything but dead weight. And I'm like, that's what I'm trying to explain to people, right? Like that's what depression is. You think it's anxiety. You're taking a cigarette break because you think you're anxious, but you're just carrying depression around, like, and it's this heaviness. And so it was like, there's another line that says, I can see right through you like an x-ray. So, as I said earlier, being a clinician means we're just trained to see pathology as it sits in front of us. We're a little bit more hyper aware of certain traits and how people display certain things, because we paid a hefty price to get that type of training. So, right. So it was one of those things where I was like, okay, I want to be able to convey scholarly wisdom, but our practical truth approach to everything, because that's what makes it tactful disruption. I want to teach you something about intersectionality without throwing the book at you or making you read a bunch of small print, but that'll get your attention. So I like that song. We use these little wood mannequins for a lot of the concepts we put out there. So we found one where he had a cigarette, and it was like, this would be perfect. So we wanted to make sure that it ended right where the figure had the cigarette. So you're like, oh, and then you see under it is like anxiety and depression. But what I love about creating these videos is I create them from a very flow state. I definitely use music to like vibe out and meditate. And really just kind of process like weeks and weeks of reading and information. And what I thought was really dope about it is like, hey, how can I get people interested in what we do without like selling them anything? So I tell people, we're going to be the Nike of this mental health and career development. Look at every campaign Nike does. They're not selling you one shoe, but you're a part of that issue now. So I was like, I want to talk to you about it, but I want you to be so geeked about it that you're like, okay, so you kind of end up hitting the play button a couple of times. Like, wait a second, what's happening here, right? And
Right.
so I love that because it's like watching how like the left side of the brain talks to the right side of the brain. So we know that if we use music, it'll engage you. But if I actually put content related to the music now, you have to actually make that connection. And when you do, you might actually smile. So we're giving away free therapy that way,
Yeah.
giving you dosages, like little micro dosages, but like carefully thought out. Like it, we spend time thinking about these things. It's not
Right.
like, oh, well, let me just, my flow states mean that I'm trying to process information, but there's a way to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always felt like that is a great measure of kind of being an expert at your craft, is not just being able to know about it, but be able to communicate it to the person. And I almost feel like the videos and the content helps out because it's not like, I guess, combative, if maybe that's not the right word, but it doesn't make me feel like, oh, I should feel bad about going out for a smoke break. It lets you know about the awareness and the manifestation of what that could be of. And I think when you have that awareness, you have it in a less, I guess, confrontational way, then not only does it help you to be aware, but it also helps you to know that you can take the steps in order to kind of see what that person is going through, have a conversation, have that human connectivity that you may not have had in that organization.
Definitely. And I think there's two. We have fun making them.
Yes, that's always a good one too, right?
There's a lot of fun there, but because it's like you got to get it perfect. And it's like, no, it has to end here. And then, like, no, it has to set here, and it has to do this. It has to look like smokes over it. It's just that's the fun part. But you said something, and it just made me think that I think more so than anything, beyond just making it relatable, is we ask those questions. So since it's Labor Day, the questions we put on this was do you know the labor laws around the actual breaks that you are given at work, right? And you know how like a lot of people say, you should say you smoke so you could get a break, right? And
Yeah.
then we said, do you know the number one occupation where the most cigarette breaks occur? And then it's like, okay, have you ever noticed the link between mental health and cigarette smokers at that point? And so, we're not necessarily throwing like the scholarly pieces at you. We're just
Right.
inviting you into a conversation so that you can create that level of self-awareness, and so that you can, in a unique way, really become more outwardly focused.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think outwardly focused on a specific topic that doesn't always get talked about as much as it should, which is the mental health. And I think you become aware of those things, and as you said, you start to, when you see those questions, you start to ponder like why is that the way that it is, and then it starts to create that conversation, that narrative. And I think too, the steps to hopefully alleviate a lot of that mental health I guess issues or things that could come about.
Yes, especially when it comes to, I think, jobs people have, versus careers people are running after.
Mm-hmm.
I think that makes a significant difference. To the number one job where there are the most cigarette breaks are in the food industry. Versus, see when usually the higher up people go, the less you see them with habits of smoking. So it's just something to like really be aware of in a really like, oh, type of way.
Yeah, absolutely. It creates gets those wheels or those gears turning, so to speak. And I know you touched on this in the interview as well too, about kind of like, and you just said it about the career versus job. Could you talk a little bit more about that and how that kind of connects with mental health and what exactly people may not be aware of from that standpoint?
Yeah, so we have a little campaign we did for this too, right? When people call them videos, I call them little campaigns. We're marketing
Mhm.
ourselves here.
Right.
um, there's one we did. We used the Just song by Pharrell.
Hmm.
It's like a look at all these slave masters dancing on you, posing on your dollar, and it was like
Hmm.
get it, and it was like, oh, it's brilliant, right? Because
Right.
in many ways, if you have a job, you're kind of a slave to the income, right? But the irony is like, every dollar bill does have some slave owner on it,
Mhm.
ironically.
Right.
But then it's like that also takes away time, like certain jobs, it eats up a lot of your time. Like when I counsel the criminally insane and I'm in a prison system, I already understand that 10 hours of my life are gone, right? Like
Hmm.
it's like the drive there, the 8 hours there, the drive back. It's like, Jesus Christ, why do I do this again? But it's like, what am I at that moment? I'm a slave to my compassion, right? Like I really want to help other people. But mental health as my career profession, I can do this in any space. I can go be a career, like I can do mental health as a career counselor in an economic development firm because I've done that, right? Or I can go and help out with innovation because I'm a counselor. I'm a little bit more open-minded and I don't see things the same way. Additionally, I'm in a field that requires continuous learning, right? And it's multidisciplinary. So I am not going to be relying 100% on my own intellect and knowledge because I'm going to have psychiatrists who've been in the game for 20 years around me, or psychologists, or even, people from the legal side of it all. So having all of those additional pieces put around me provides, areas of support where I can bounce off of. Versus if I'm in a job, like you can only do so much at Family Dollar as a cashier, right? Like, who are you going to bounce things off of? Unless your goal is to own a bunch of Family Dollars, then you're going to keep working your way up to be around more people of that nature. But I think most people at this point in the game know the difference between a job and a career. When a career gives you a lot more freedom and definitely supports you in income to be able to touch people in a way where it doesn't feel like work. You don't have those physical labor pains. You don't have somatic symptoms showing up as back problems. You don't have headaches. You're just like, I'm happy to do what I do, and I'm happy to learn as I do it. And to me, those are the best type of careers. Jobs is, I can't, if this talks to me like that one more time, I can't wait to quit. Oh, I did that interview. They gotta call me. It's $2 more. Career, you're like, I'm not unemployable. Deuces. On
Yeah.
to the next. And
Right.
it's a very different mindset. And we kind of love helping people get out of that.
Yeah.
And because we work with people in their careers, right? And then they supply our pipeline so we can help people move out of jobs into careers, or even recognize you're never going to be an employee. What's your entrepreneurial dream? Let's help you get that squared away so that career development starts to happen. And career development is really just, it's your personal life stage. Like, step into your role. Like, let us help you figure out who you are, because the closer you move towards your second self, the better off you are going to be as far as like the healing process beginning. Because we know there's data that supports that. You have to be able to have jobs that don't add additional stress so that you can actually get to this space and place where you're taking a turn for the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so many times, as you talked about, not to pick on the Family Dollar or anything, but if you're there and you're working there, just understand that sometimes the effects that could come about from from having a job versus having that career mindset. And I think I love that you said the mindset, because I think so many times people aren't aware of it, and that's all that they know. But once you get aware of exactly how you can change your mindset and the tools by which you can do that, that's when you can start to, manifest the life that you want to see. Because I think so many times we forget and don't realize that we do and can change our mindset and create more of a life that we want to have.
Yeah, but we might not be around the people who can do that, right?
Right. Hmm.
So that's why like I said, we give away these little micro doses, just positive psychology. Like, we don't teach you something, but it's like, oh, wait, I didn't even pay attention to that. And I looked something up, right? We're not responsible for your learning. We don't believe in learned helplessness. So we go help you help yourself. You don't even have to pay us, but you will get something out of
Yeah.
that. And there's a video just like that, like I said, that one, and I think it was narrative, identity, and meaning making, right? Because the bigger conversation is intercultural communications and cognitive dissonance, right? They're saying, I want to be anti-racist. No, you want to understand how to communicate across cultures, because let's be realistic. If you have a mental health issue that's never been addressed, you can't go and address something systemically first. You have to address what's going on internally. And so we want to be able to help. And I like that we can do that with all people, which is why we use a little woodman. It's right. It's not a specific face. It's whoever, identifies with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's extremely powerful. And I think obviously during this time, you see that manifest itself in so many different ways, and things that we see and that we take in. So that's why I love that you're kind of teaching a person to fish, so to speak, and helping them empower them so that they can be able to kind of be successful. So Ariel, truly appreciate you for hopping on for this bonus section. What I wanted to do was pass you the mic again, just to see if there's anything additional you want to let us know. And then of course, how best we can get a hold of you.
Um, so you can get a hold of me on any of our social. It's at LLC Tactful, TACTFUL. for the most part, we give away free 30-minute sessions. We want you to get the mental health. It is completely confidential. We do not take notes. When you become a client, we take notes. But hey, you just need to have that conversation. It's 30 to 50 minutes. If you're part of the company, 30 minutes. If you're an individual, 50 minutes. And it's at doxy.me/tactful disruption. So we're here to support you. We're here to help you have that conversation with yourself before you go and have that conversation publicly. But we're going to support you along the way because that's just the right thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely during this time, especially, we all need more support. So I appreciate you for hopping on, and we will have the links and information in the show notes as well too. But creating that space to have that conversation, have conversations, especially around mental health that sometimes we don't have, is so important. So I appreciate you for taking some time out with us today, and of course, leading that charge.
Thank you so much for having me here. And thank you for leading this charge.
You're very, very welcome.